So this next question is a follow up to the previous segment. Why do you think African Americans lag behind other racial groups in terms of progress in this country?
Yeah, I think it's probably three main reasons. Um, and I think following from the last video, the first one I would say is mindset. Mindset. You know, uh, psychology is the study of human thought and behavior, roughly speaking, how we think and how we behave. And behavior tends to just be an expression of the mind, the expression of thought. Um, if I can control a person's mind, I can control a person's behavior. But the mind is a complex thing. There are many components that go to or that comprise what we call or what we're speaking about when we say the mind. So aspirations, emotions, intelligent, perspective, even perspective. So I think a lot of times what harms us is our perspective on things. We grow up in a culture. Our parents tell us this, not my parents per se, but I've heard this said by parents. I've heard this said by grandparents. It's definitely said by black media in black culture. It impresses upon us a spirit of defeat before we even get started. It impresses, it doesn't, our culture and just the habit of black life, we're not empowered with messages that lets us believe that the same things other people achieve we can achieve. What's impressed upon us is a sense of inferiority, whether we know it that way or not. And I think that, unfortunately, to many of us, we live in a perpetual state of inferiority. We just do. This is controversial. Not all of us, mind you, not all of us, okay? So to be clear and to be fair, but I think far too many of us, we think we're raised this way. We're taught this way. Even the people who talk about race to such a degree that race is the defining factor in terms of everything, that limits us. That limits us. Because if a person already believes that he has his race working against him, he may actually just be bad at this thing. He may actually just be a failure at that other thing. But if he's thinking that race is the defining feature of his existence, then he'll never be of a mindset to truly analyze himself and say, okay, where did I go wrong? Why did I fail? You see what I'm saying? So I think it's perspective. I think that we need a new language. Our parents need to be telling the children, the teachers, they don't need to be like, I've seen this on social media. You know, a child is acting up and the teacher is telling the child, well, don't you know this world is designed to kill black boys and destroy black boys, and you acting like this, you're not going to have a chance. That's a terrible thing. You don't have to tell that young man that. Why don't you tell that young man? You don't have to say it in these words, but I'm saying, why don't we have a culture where if you want to inspire the young man, speak about his own qualities as a young man. Speak about his value as a young man. Speak about the immense amount of potential that he holds as a young man. And that's besides the point of even trying to discover why he's acting out like that in the first place. So I would say, I think I want to circle back around to mindset, because why he's acting up, using this young man as a type, I think it goes to the primary, the number one issue, which is family. I worked at a school one time, and the young boy was just acting up, wasn't doing his work, cursing in class, and he was so out of order. They had to get the principal, the director. I was the assistant at the time, assistant director. They had to get the director, and when they isolated the young man and asked him what was the issue was he saw his mother performing a sex act on her boyfriend, and that just disturbed his spirit for the rest of the day. That's why he was acting up. So that young boy, though he was acting up in that moment, he was responding from something. A man living with his mother, knowing that that man is not his father, knowing that that man, not living with his mother, visiting, knowing that that man is not really taking care of him, that man is not investing in him, he's not investing in the family, he's not in the role of a pillar that a man should be. And that man was was receiving something from that boy's mother that that boy knew he shouldn't be receiving. And I'm keeping it very clean. So it disturbed him. Now he didn't know that's what was working in him. He knew he was mad. Now imagine how many of our young males, and I'm just sticking to the males right now, grow up in that mindset and in that spirit. As a matter of fact, the studies show that girls who grow up in a single parent household, they tend to do better than boys who grew up in a single parent household, because boys need a model. Boys need that male model, that male figure, that male authority. There's another study that I've been made familiar with before. I probably shared this too, where there were, I forget where this was, in Africa, the savannah, African savannah somewhere, where these elephants were just attacking people, killing rhinoceroses even. They were just on the rampage. Usually the caravans would come through, safaris, and they just watch. But these were these aggressive elephants. And like I said, they were killing other animals. When they began to study the condition of those elephants, they found out that, and I may have the details wrong, but the overarching structure of the story is correct. They found out that poachers had wiped out the fathers, the elephant daddies. These were all young teenage elephants, and their daddies had been taken away. So they had no one to discipline them. They had no standard of discipline or conduct. So they were attacking everybody. So what they did is they brought in another group of elephants, grown male elephants, not men, but you get what I'm saying, grown male elephants. And they established, when those elephants came among them, they established a set of, hierarchical rituals, to establish dominance. You know how animals do, like buck heads and all of that. In the final analysis, the behavior stopped. Now, this is in the elephant world. So the family structure in Black America is absolutely deplorable. 70, 72, 73% homes without a parent. Most of the time it's without a father. And just like we just said about that young male who was acting up, because if he continues in that line, or those young elephants, we know what happens to these young boys when they are raised without fathers. They're more likely to commit suicide, to face depression, to go into prison, not being able to read at a whatever grade level, etc. So the family, the African-American family, has been decimated. And the decimation of the African-American family, can we actually say that there was structural support for that? Did the powers that be permit that? To a degree, yes. I think Bill Clinton even came back and apologized for the legislation that they passed that got so many Black men locked up. Currently, some of them are still in prison. They stole, or they, broke into a car. It wasn't like they were murdering people, but they had the 3 strikes you're out. So there was very harsh legislation against these young Black men, and it took a lot of them out of the communities. Okay. At the same time, however, we have to admit that by that time, the political structure, the political powers that be, weren't just white. The Black Caucus was in existence. The Black church is intimately linked up with the Black Caucus, the Congressional Black Caucus. Why did we not have, we during those days, we had Jet Magazine, Ebony Magazine, Essence Magazine, BET was around. Why didn't we have any serious dialogue? Why weren't there any serious warnings to the Black community? Why weren't the Black church leaders seriously addressing? And to this day, they don't address family. Not only the consequences of that legislation, why right now and to this day, as thoroughly as the Black family has been wiped out, why don't we hear from the Black church leadership? Why don't we hear from the Black Muslim leadership? With a few exceptions. Why don't we hear from those who are in positions to prick the conscience of our people that our family life needs to be put together? The second thing that really, I'm saying second because the first was perception, but I'm saying family. So the other thing that I would say is economics. No, pardon me, education. Education leads into economics. We tend to we hear these statistics about, the average Black family doesn't have XYZ wealth that the average white family has. A lot of that has to do with education and marriage. Studies have shown that the more educated a person is, the better off they will be economically. Now, they came out with a study relatively recently, a few years ago, saying with all of this advanced education blacks have been getting, they're not seeing an increase in their overall net worth or what have you. That's for a couple reasons. One of the reasons is, this is an older reason that I read about or heard about years ago. When blacks make it, because of our family structure, like I'm that one six-figure earning black person, all my family is in line for $1. And that tends to not be the case with other groups. So I'm carrying a greater burden when I achieve. That's number one. And then number two, despite having a PhD, I knew a sister here in the South, in Georgia. She had a PhD in some public health. She couldn't find a job. A lot of the degrees, a lot of the education that we get, the market doesn't demand. Right now, we're in the age of tech. We're in the age of AI. We're in a time of great innovation. A lot of business, a huge amount of business, even like Black Friday that just passed. A lot of business has transferred online. The market is not demanding psychologists, a BA in psychology or a BA in art or whatever, or a BA in education. A lot of the teachers who go into education want to quit because all of these kids, not all of them, but too many of them are hellions. So even when we get degrees, we're not getting degrees that the market demands. So, but going further with this, the studies also show that not only advanced education that the market demands, but when you have families. So not only me as a male, not only do I have a master's degree in nursing or I have a doctorate, or I'm like a medical doctor, but if I have that and my wife has a PhD in engineering, I'm just making this up. I'm trying to think of something that's in demand. In other words, when I'm married and I have education and she has education, that increases our likelihood of success. But we're not moving like that in large number. I can't tell you how many, I used to say it when I was young, and I can't tell you how many of us used to say education's not for me. Education's not for me. I hear so many blacks, young boys, education's not for me. Now, either we are the most rare group in the world, well, for some odd reason, we don't need education for success in life, or we've been deceived. That brings me back to the first thing that I said. It's perception. And I think the problem with our perception, with our perspective, is coming from our culture, number one. I'm not saying number one in terms of rank. I'm just saying number one is the first point. The second thing that's messing us up goes back to family. Our perception is messed up because our families are broken. See, family, the father there, the mother there, the grandfather, the uncle, particularly if these are people of quality, not like the pimp uncle. I'm talking about the good uncle. They set a standard. They set a standard by which you say, okay, that's what I want to be like. But we lack models in our community. We lack standards of what to ascend into, what to become in our community. So a lot of black men are just simply uninspired. Now, if you factor in black culture today, like there's this song I was listening to by this girl. It's called Brokies. I think the song's called Brokies. And it's like Brokies. You know, I sampled the music, to see what's happening. And I'm saying to myself, she's teasing. Now, this reminds me when we were in school, I don't want no scrubs. Can you pay my bills? There's this thing in our culture that tells our men, if you don't have any money, you're worthless. You don't have anything. Now, for a young man growing into his development, coming into his manhood, that messes his head up. Because he sees men who make, no 20-year-old is rich unless they have some type of genius about them and they're able to, do something very innovative. So here's a 19-year-old, 20-year-old coming up in a culture where women in his culture are telling him if he doesn't have money, he's nothing. And the only thing that he can really see in his surrounding that shows that he can get money, the only model of making money at his age is something that's more than likely illegal. So we have a culture, I'm just using this as an example, that reinforces dysfunction. It reinforces self-hate, and it perpetuates our regress. We're a regressed people. Again, I go back to Islam, al-Islam. See, from an Islamic perspective, black culture is polytheism. It's pure polytheism. These people worship their genitals. These people worship their private parts. They worship their butts. They worship this. They worship drugs. They worship killing. And all of these, sex outside of marriage, intoxicants, gambling, etc., these are all the handiworks of Shaitan in our view. So we have to be aware of how we have been affected. And I believe from the Islamic perspective, we have to understand that we have the medicine, but you can't give the medicine properly if you don't know what the problem is.